Konnichiwa, this is the Shogunstein, and kind of like a DC movie doing an origin story on, say, Iron Man or Captain America. A little bit of an origin story for the Shogunstein here today. So back in maybe 1992-ish, when I was maybe a sophomore, maybe a junior, can't really fully remember, but at prestigious Mary Washington College in Fredericksburg, Virginia, as a history major. And you had to take one non-Western history class. Again, this is a different time and age that would probably be different today. And I took a class in Shogun Japan, which today I would know as probably the Sengoku period of the time between Oda Nobunaga, Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu. I didn't know any of that back then. I was just taking the class because I needed a non-Western class. I really didn't fully quite understand what was going on in that class. So other than that one class, I really did not have much historical background in East Asia. Obviously, I took global studies in school in New York, but I didn't really study a lot of Asian history. So when I became in my side hustle, obviously my main hustle is a YouTuber, but with my side hustle in history, my first year with my side hustle, I had to teach sections of the old New York State Global Studies for the 9th grade, which included a semester on basically Africa, South Asia, India, and East Asia, China, Japan, Korea. And something clicked. I came into that job, someone that really liked Civil War history. It's one of the reasons I went to prestigious Mary Washington College, Fredericksburg, Virginia, home of 4 major Civil War battles. Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania Courthouse. Spotsylvania is where I student taught. Chancellorsville, I was at Chancellor High School, did some student teaching. Chancellorsville, the Battle of Chancellorsville, that's where Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson's killed there by his own troops, and the Wilderness right there. So I was a Civil War guy, U.S. history guy, and I get 9th grade global studies, and I got to self-teach myself using the old Global Mosaic textbook. Got to be one chapter ahead of the kids, and something just clicked, especially on Japanese and Chinese history, something that just wasn't there previously. As someone who's always been interested in history for as long as I can remember, I've loved history and read history and studied history. But it wasn't until my first year with my side hustle in the South Bronx with global studies did something click. And then, not quite sure how or where I found it, but I got a pamphlet that said month study tour in Japan. This was called Japan in Focus. It was through the CUNY City College of New York. There was a connection to Townsend Harris. Townsend Harris was one of the founders of the CUNY system in New York. He was one of the first ambassadors with Commodore Perry when the United States opened Japan in the 1850s, Commodore Perry and what they called the Black Ships, because of the steam power. The Japanese had been isolated at that time and hadn't seen a steam ship. So I applied and I got chosen to go with about 30 other teachers for a study tour of Japan. And this was the book that I had back in 1996, still probably the best travel guide, even with the internets and all that. I love this book. I've had this book for a long time. And I went to Japan for a month in 1996, stayed on the island of Honshu, went to all kinds of places, got all kinds of stories, met my good friend who's a teacher in Saitama. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience. I went back to Japan in 98. Went back again in 2001 and 2003. So I've made 4 trips to Japan, but this is my book that I had during that first trip. Before we went on that study tour with the teachers, we did extensive study of Japanese history and culture at City College of New York. Now, in 1998, one day, my boss over there at my side hustle in the South Bronx called me into his office and said, "Hey, I know a lady. She's running a trip to China. Do you want to go? I can get you on the trip." Sure enough, I applied for the trip with the American Forum for Global Education with the late, great Hazel Greenberg, who I owe so much to. She wrote curriculum for New York City that I used a lot in my side hustle, and she was heavily involved with the American Forum for Global Education. And in 1998, I did a month in China. This was my Lonely Planet book for going across China. Was there for a month. Beijing, Shanghai, Chengdu, Datong. Amazing trip as well. Xi'an, lots of stories. Used this book again when I went to see my buddy Big Scott, who was teaching in China in 2000. He'd been on the trip in 98. Used this book again. So these two books, very special to me because this was my first trip to Asia, 1996. And I probably used this book on all four of my trips, even though it's old, and probably, the restaurants and hotel stuff is outdated, but the history and the culture in this book is great. This book, awesome, Lonely Planet. This is, again, my edition from 98, used it again 2000. I still have, you can see the pages turned, there's still, brochures and stuff here. These are, I'm old school today, probably everything you do on your phone and Google Maps. This is the way I traveled. So part of the origin of the backstory of the Shogunstein is, these two trips, 96, 98, they, piqued an interest in me that I didn't know I had with, East Asian history and culture. And starting with this trip in 96, I've done a lot of reading of, ancient and Middle Ages and contemporary history of China and Japan, not just the world wars or imperialism, but I've read a lot of stuff, done a lot of studying, a lot of workshops. So part of the origin of the Shogunstein name deals with my side hustle in history and my enthusiasm when I had enthusiasm in my side hustle for when we would teach in the old global studies, then it became global history and geography, world history, of teaching the subjects of East Asia, whether it be, Confucius and Taoism, or Qin Shi Huangdi, or Zheng He and the Treasure Fleet, or whether it be, the geography of Japan, the Sengoku, love the Sengoku period, Tokugawa Ieyasu, Meiji Restoration, Commodore Perry showing up. That's where the name comes from. It was not a name that I gave myself, but actually it came from some of the people involved in my side hustle in history. They came up with it, not me. And the name is just kind of stuck. Now, speaking of trips to Asia, 2003, again involving my side hustle, we did take people to Japan for a week. I remember it was right around the time that the Second Iraq War had started. I remember actually watching footage of the beginning of the war while in a hotel in Tokyo. And that was my last trip to Asia. Again, Japan, 96, 98, 2001, and 2003. China, 98 and 2000. Went to Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia, and Thailand in 2001, as well as summer before 9/11. The interest has stayed ever since, but I haven't been back to Asia in a long time, again, since 2003. Well, that's about to change. Here we go. We got the new additions here. The Shogunstein will be returning to Asia this summer. We're going to be hitting Japan. Going to spend some time in Tokyo and Kyoto and hopefully Osaka and Himeji and maybe Nara. So we're going to be going to Japan. I'll be going to Singapore for the first time. Spend a little time in Singapore. Very interested actually in that campaign, that battle where the Japanese were able to defeat the British in Singapore, so I'll be looking to do some World War II history in Singapore. Also just some of the economics of Singapore, and of course, Malaysia, where Mrs. Shogunstein's family is from. Looking forward to going to Malacca for the second time, now that I know a lot more about East Indian trade, we know a lot more about the treasure fleets and Zheng He. I'd be interested to go to Malacca again. So it's been a while. The interest in Asian history and culture hasn't gone away, but getting back to Japan, getting back to Malaysia, seeing Singapore for the first time, very excited. We're bringing little Shogunstein and of course Mrs. Shogunstein. So looking forward to getting back to Asia. Hopefully get to do some stuff involving Tokugawa Ieyasu. I'm hoping maybe to do some stuff around Osaka Castle, study the campaign from 1614 with Osaka Castle and the Tokugawa family. Again, never been to Singapore. Excited to see what's in Singapore. Excited to try some of the food in the hawker markets. And of course, we have family, my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, mother-in-law in Malaysia. So in the meantime, we're still going to keep up our content on board games and music and the other things that we do. But coming soon will hopefully be some content from Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, and it's nice to get that travel bug again. Once upon a time before, kids and family and mortgage, it was easy to go away for a month. And I was very lucky, especially with my side hustle in New York, be able to take opportunities where they had opportunities for people with my side hustle in history to actually go to Japan and study. And actually, again, with Hazel Greenberg and the American Forum for Global Education, got to go to China, got to go to Vietnam and Cambodia. And those great experiences, but stuff you can't do, and it's a little more difficult to do when you're older and got a lot more obligations. So it's time back to Asia. Shogunstein back in his element, doing the research, looking for other fellow YouTubers who have been to Japan and Singapore more recently, getting back into the swing of things. Obviously, we have family in Malaysia, so that part of the trip should be fairly easy. Can't wait to get back to Malacca. Can't wait to have some durian. Oh my goodness, can't wait for the durian. Anyway, this is the Shogunstein. Very excited to announce that we're heading back to Asia for a couple weeks, and that'll be in the summer. In the meantime, Shogunstein out.